In the vastness of the galaxy, there existed countless star systems, inhabited by a wide array of alien civilizations. Their ships traveled freely across the stars, mapping out every known sector, every unknown planet, every deep, dark corner of the universe. Yet, amidst this cosmic network of life and exploration, one place stood out, a place that everyone knew about, but no one ever spoke of. It was the area known as human space. The Galactic Map, a tool used by every empire and species to navigate the universe, stopped abruptly at the borders of Earth's solar system and the surrounding colonies. Beyond that, there was nothing. No stars, no planets, no light. The area was blank, as if the universe itself refused to acknowledge its existence. This gap in the map was the subject of whispered rumors, old stories, and cold silence. To most civilizations, human space was a forbidden zone, a place so shrouded in mystery and fear that no one dared to approach it, let alone attempt to explore it. The fear was not of the unknown, for space was filled with uncharted territories. No, it was a deeper, more unspoken fear. A fear born from the ancient texts of those who dared to venture near the human domain and never returned. Tales were told of ships going silent when they crossed the invisible border, of strange forces that seemed to warp reality itself. For Tessa, an ambitious young explorer from the Andara system, these rumors were nothing more than old myths. She had grown up hearing them, like a child hears stories of ghosts. To her, they were nothing but cautionary tales designed to keep others away from human space. But Tessa was no child, and she had no patience for old superstitions. She had always dreamed of discovering something greater, of uncovering the secrets that the galaxy hid from everyone else. And when she stumbled upon something that could lead her into the heart of the mystery, she knew she had to follow it. Began with an ancient artifact. Tessa had discovered it during an excavation on a distant planet in the Delta Quadrant. It was small, unassuming, just a relic from a long-dead civilization. But when she activated it, a signal burst forth, unlike anything she had ever encountered before. It wasn't just a random transmission, it was a clear message, a call from beyond the borders of known space. And the source of the signal? It came from somewhere deep within human space. Her pulse quickened as she reviewed the data again and again. There was no mistake. The coordinates pointed beyond the galactic map. The signal was coming from where the stars disappeared. Tessa's heart raced. She had heard the stories, of course, the whispers about human space, the warnings from the elders of her people, and the mysterious disappearances of previous expeditions. They had all vanished, their ships scattered to the winds, their fates sealed in the dark void of the forbidden zone. But now, she had something the others did not: a signal. A lead. This wasn't just some tale told around campfires. This was real. Her decision was almost immediate. She would go. She had to. There was something in the depths of her being that told her this was her destiny. The opportunity to explore the unknown and uncover secrets older than the galaxy itself was too great to ignore. She made preparations quickly, despite the reservations of her crew. They were afraid. They had heard the same stories, and some of them had family histories linked to those ancient, failed expeditions. Yet, Tessa's determination was unwavering. She had always been the one to push boundaries, to venture further than anyone else dared to go. This was her chance to prove not only to her crew, but to herself that the legends surrounding human space were nothing more than superstition. The journey to human space was not an easy one. Tessa's ship, the Altera, cut through the vast expanse of space, heading toward the edge of the known galaxy. The closer they got, the more the crew began to feel the weight of their mission. Tessa could see the unease in their faces, the fear that clung to them like a shadow. As they passed through the final systems, the stars began to thin. It was subtle at first, like a gradual fade. The familiar constellations became more distant, and the space around them seemed to stretch unnaturally, like they were crossing an invisible threshold. Then, the lights on the ship began to flicker, and a low hum filled the air. Tessa could feel it, an odd, unsettling presence. The universe around them seemed wrong. The fabric of space itself felt thin, stretched too far. She glanced at her navigator, who was intently studying the star charts, his eyes wide with confusion. The data was going haywire. The map was glitching, flickering, and then nothing. There was nothing on their screens. Just blank space. The stars had vanished. "Are we even in the right place?" her navigator asked, his voice strained. Tessa didn't answer right away. She stared out into the endless void beyond the ship. The vastness was suffocating, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. The signal they had tracked was gone. The coordinates were dead. But Tessa didn't believe it. She knew they were too close to turn back now. They had crossed the point of no return. With determination, Tessa ordered the ship to continue. There was no turning back. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke up. The tension was palpable. They could all feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on them, but they were committed. The Altera sailed deeper into the void, closer to the borders of human space, where no one had dared to tread for centuries. Suddenly, as if to punctuate the eerie silence, a bright flash lit up the dark expanse of space. It was unlike anything Tessa had ever seen, an immense burst of light, brighter than 1,000 suns, and then a sudden, bone-chilling silence. The ship rocked violently, and for a split second, Tessa's vision blurred. She heard the screams of her crew, but it felt distant, as if they were underwater. The ship shuddered, and the instruments went dark. Everything around them fell into an unnatural stillness. For the first time since they had entered this forbidden space, Tessa felt the cold grip of fear. Something was out there. Something they weren't meant to find. And as the Altera drifted in the void, with no stars, no map, and no guidance, Tessa understood one undeniable truth. Human space wasn't just a place no one dared to explore, it was a place no one had ever returned from. The mystery was deeper than she had imagined. Tessa's ship, Altera, drifted silently toward the heart of human space, its crew tense and watchful. The unsettling sensation that had begun the moment they entered this forbidden sector only intensified as they neared the edges of Earth's solar system. There was something wrong with the stars here, something unnatural. They shimmered faintly, their glow dimmed, as if they were trying to hide from the ship's approach. The coldness of the void seemed deeper, darker, as if the very fabric of space was suffocating under an ancient weight. No one on board spoke of it, but every crew member felt the same unease, a gnawing sense that they were trespassing into a place where time itself had forgotten to exist. As the Altera approached the outer planets of the solar system, a sudden blip on the radar startled the crew. A massive object appeared on their sensors, hidden just beyond the orbit of Neptune. It was centuries old, perhaps millennia. An ancient space station, once abandoned but still standing, clinging to life like a long-forgotten relic. It was unlike anything Tessa had ever seen. Built by an alien race long extinct, its design was alien even to the galaxy's oldest known species. She could feel the presence of something ancient in the air, something that whispered of forgotten histories. The ship's engines hummed softly as it slowly approached the station, its worn-out exterior covered in scars from the ages. Time had not been kind to it, yet it seemed strangely alive, as though it had endured all that had passed by in the eons. Tessa ordered the crew to prepare for docking, her heart pounding in anticipation. They had come this far, and the answers they sought might lie inside this derelict station. As the Altera latched onto the station's docking bay, the crew's tension reached its peak. The ship's airlock hissed as the docking doors opened, revealing a dark, empty hall. The silence was overwhelming, as if the station itself was holding its breath. Tessa stepped forward, her boots echoing on the cold, metallic floor, while the rest of her crew hesitated behind her, unwilling to be the first to break the eerie stillness. The interior of the station was a labyrinth of corridors, all leading to a central chamber. The walls were covered in strange alien symbols, their meaning lost to time. The air was stale, and the temperature was uncomfortably low, yet everything inside the station remained eerily intact, as if the passage of time had left it untouched. The crew ventured deeper into the station, their footsteps muffled by the thick dust coating the floor. Every corner they turned revealed more remnants of a long-dead civilization. But there was one thing that caught Tessa's attention: a large, sealed door at the heart of the station. It was far more elaborate than anything they had seen so far, inscribed with patterns that seemed to shift and change as if they were alive. This was no ordinary door. It was a gateway, a threshold to something far greater than they had imagined. Tessa instructed her team to begin work on opening the door. It took hours of effort. But finally, the door groaned open, revealing an archive chamber unlike any other. The room was filled with enormous data crystals, each one glowing faintly with a pulse of energy. These crystals, though ancient, contained the history of a civilization long lost to the stars. Tessa's heart raced as she activated one of the crystals, watching as it projected holographic images into the air. The data was fragmented, but the story it told was chilling. The records revealed an unspeakable conflict, one that had been erased from the collective memory of the galaxy. It spoke of a war between humanity and a coalition of galactic powers, a war so devastating that its memory had been deliberately buried. The humans, it seemed, had been underestimated by every civilization they encountered. At first, they were dismissed as primitive, a species too young and too weak to pose any threat. But as the war unfolded, those who had underestimated them quickly realized their mistake. Humans possessed an unimaginable power, a power that allowed them to fight back against entire fleets, to destroy ships with nothing but their minds, to warp the fabric of reality itself. The records showed images of human warriors, their eyes glowing with unnatural energy, standing against armies of technologically superior races. Ships that had once been invincible crumbled before the might of human weapons. Entire star systems were rendered uninhabitable, and entire species were eradicated, wiped from existence by the sheer force of humanity's will. The power of humanity was not something any species could comprehend, let alone confront. Even the greatest empires of the galaxy feared them. The ancient alien civilizations that had created the station had hoped to understand humanity's power, but they, too, had fallen victim to it. The war had been so devastating that, in the end, both sides had chosen to erase it from history. The details of the conflict, the true nature of human power, were deliberately hidden, locked away in archives like this one, accessible only to those brave or foolish enough to seek them out. Tessa's mind raced as she digested the information. The war had ended in a stalemate, but the consequences had been far-reaching. Humanity had been left scarred, and its power had been hidden away, buried under layers of secrecy and myth. But now, in this forgotten station, Tessa had uncovered the truth. Humanity's power was not just a myth. It was real. It was terrifying. It was something the galaxy had tried to forget. As Tessa stood in the chamber, surrounded by the eerie glow of the ancient data crystals, she began to realize the full weight of what she had stumbled upon. This mission, this search for the truth, was no longer just about uncovering the past. It was about something much bigger, something much more dangerous. What would happen if the rest of the galaxy learned the truth about humanity? What would happen if the galactic powers realized that the humans they had feared and erased from history were not gone, that they were still out there, waiting to rise again? Tessa felt a deep unease settle in her stomach. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The archives had opened a door to the past, but they had also opened a door to the future. The question now wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about whether humanity's immense power would rise again, and if it did, who would be left to stand against it? She looked at her crew, each of them staring at the data with a mix of awe and fear. None of them had expected this. None of them had truly understood the stakes of what they were doing. And as Tessa turned away from the records, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had already set something into motion, a force they might not be able to control. The galaxy had lived in fear of humanity's power for centuries, and now that fear was about to resurface. Tessa knew one thing for sure. The truth they had uncovered was far bigger than any of them had imagined, and the universe was about to find out just how terrifying humanity could truly be. Tessa's fingers trembled as she sifted through the endless data streams in the station's central archive. The more she uncovered, the more she realized how little she truly understood about the galaxy and about humanity. Each fragment of information painted a picture of a terrifying past, a past that no one dared speak of. The Shroud, a name spoken in hushed tones, began to take form in her mind. They were an ancient race of intergalactic conquerors, feared by all who had encountered them. Stories from the farthest reaches of the galaxy told of their merciless expansion, their thirst for domination, and their unyielding desire to bend the universe to their will. Yet, these stories were always incomplete, fragmented, as if someone had gone to great lengths to suppress them. The more Tessa dug, the clearer it became that there was a reason the Shroud had been erased from history. According to the data, the Shroud had once set their sights on human space, believing that even their immense power would be no match for the primitive humans. But they were wrong. What they encountered on the fringes of human territory was far beyond anything they could have imagined. Humanity's weapons were not like the ones the Shroud had encountered in countless other wars. These weapons were capable of tearing the very fabric of space apart. Weapons that could rewrite the laws of the universe itself. The Shroud had underestimated human resilience, and in doing so, they had sealed their fate. The records spoke of a battle so catastrophic that it shattered the stars themselves. Ships vanished, entire fleets were torn apart, and entire planets were erased from existence in a blink of an eye. The Shroud didn't just retreat, they were obliterated. Every trace of their presence in human space was erased, as if they had never existed. Their ships, their soldiers, their very name were wiped from the galactic memory. It was as if the universe had conspired to bury the encounter under layers of time, propaganda, and fear. Tessa's heart raced as she read through the archives, trying to process what she was learning. The Shroud's defeat was not simply a victory for humanity. It was the beginning of something much darker. The data suggested that the true nature of humanity's power was hidden away, deliberately obscured from the galactic community. The stories of the humans who had defeated the Shroud were whispered, distorted, and eventually erased. There were no songs of their triumph, no monuments to their victories. Instead, history had been rewritten, leaving behind only the sanitized version that painted humanity as insignificant, as an unthreatening species that had yet to earn its place in the galaxy. But Tessa now knew the truth. Humanity wasn't just feared because of their past, they were feared because of what they were capable of becoming. And that was something the galaxy wasn't ready to face. As she processed the gravity of the information, Tessa felt an ominous chill creep down her spine. The station's systems, which had been dormant for eons, suddenly hummed to life. Red warning lights flashed across the darkened corridors, and the low rumble of alarms filled the air. The crew scrambled to assess the situation, their voices tinged with panic. Tessa's mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. The station had been abandoned for centuries, yet now it seemed as if it were being awakened by some unseen force. The power fluctuated wildly, and then silence. Before anyone could speak, the air around them grew thick, heavy, almost suffocating. The crew exchanged confused glances, each person feeling an eerie sense of being watched, as though they were no longer alone in the station. Tessa's breath caught in her throat as she noticed something on the far side of the room. Figures, faint outlines shifting in the dim light. They were not human. They were not even alive in the traditional sense. The figures seemed to be made of shadows, their forms rippling and distorting, as though they were not fully part of this reality. They moved without sound, gliding through the air with unnatural grace, their glowing eyes fixed on Tessa and her crew. The ship's instruments began to malfunction, flickering and glitching, as if the very laws of physics were being bent in real time. A soft, haunting whisper echoed through the station's speakers, a language no one could understand, but it was clear that it was not meant for them. It was a warning. The figures, or whatever they were, seemed to be drawn to the ship's presence, reacting to the intrusion like predatory creatures sensing prey. Tessa's heart pounded in her chest as she realized that they were not simply a manifestations of the station's long-dormant systems. These were the Guardians, the unseen forces that had been left behind to protect the station and its terrible secrets. Her mind raced. The station had been silent for centuries, but now it was alive with something far more dangerous than the Shroud. These entities, whatever they were not bound by the same rules that governed the rest of the galaxy. They were older, more powerful, and more terrifying than anything Tessa had ever encountered. She had thought that learning about the Shroud's destruction of the humans had been the most shocking part of her journey. But now she understood. The true power of humanity was not only their ability to fight back, but their ability to attract these dark, unseen forces. Tessa turned to her crew, urging them to prepare for an immediate departure. "We need to leave. Now," she commanded, her voice sharp, her usual confidence now tinged with fear. The air was growing colder, and the station seemed to pulse with a dangerous energy. The figures were closing in, their forms becoming more solid, more real with each passing second. They were not just watching anymore. They were moving, approaching, and with each step they took, the temperature seemed to drop further. Tessa's mind was racing as she ordered the crew to abandon the station and return to the ship. The Altera was their only chance of escape. But as the crew made their way back to the docking bay, the unseen forces began to strike. The walls around them trembled, shaking violently, as if some immense force was pushing against the very fabric of reality. Lights flickered, and the air became thick with static. Tessa could hear strange, otherworldly sounds filling the corridor's voices, whispers, as though the station itself was alive and watching them. They reached the airlock, but the ship wasn't there. The Altera was gone. Panic set in as the crew realized the magnitude of their situation. They were trapped, surrounded by unseen forces in a station that was coming alive with rage. Tessa's mind raced. The Altera hadn't just drifted away. It had been pulled, taken by something far beyond their understanding. The station was not just a relic, it was a prison, and they were the prisoners. In that moment. Tessa understood the full weight of their discovery. Humanity's true power wasn't just in their ability to fight. It was in the fact that they had left behind something so powerful, so terrifying, that it could alter the very course of history. And now, those unseen forces were waking up, and they were coming for them. They were not alone in the dark void of human space. The Altera barely escaped the clutches of the unseen forces, its hull groaning as it shot through the dark expanse of human space. Tessa's heart pounded in her chest as the station, once a place of mystery, faded behind them. Now nothing more than a forsaken relic. But their escape came at a heavy price. The ship had suffered significant damage, and the crew was exhausted, their faces pale with the weight of their newfound knowledge. They were no longer just explorers. They were witnesses to something far greater than they could comprehend. Yet, the real danger was far from over. The unknown forces, whatever they were, had not let them leave without a trace. Tessa knew it was only a matter of time before they were hunted again. In the distance. Earth's moon loomed like a silent sentinel. A place once considered a simple landmark in human space had become their only refuge. Tessa ordered the ship to descend, its engines sputtering and struggling to maintain control. As they neared the surface, she could feel the crew's collective breath held in anticipation. No one knew what to expect when they landed. All they knew was that they needed to find safety and answers. When the Altera finally touched down on the cold, barren surface of the moon, the silence was deafening. There were no signs of life, no energy signatures, no communication signals. Earth, in all its splendor, was strangely quiet. Tessa stepped off the ship, her boots crunching against the powdered surface, and her eyes scanned the horizon. The moon was vast, its surface marked with ancient craters and scars from millennia of cosmic impacts. Yet, as her gaze traveled farther, something caught her attention. In the distance, rising above the dust and rubble, was the outline of a city. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. The structures were massive, towering far above the surface, their jagged forms casting long, haunting shadows across the landscape. The city's architecture was entirely foreign to her, no alien race. No known civilization in the galaxy had built anything remotely similar. The walls were adorned with symbols, intricate designs that pulsed faintly in the moonlight, as if they were alive. Tessa could feel a strange energy in the air as they approached. It was as though the city had been waiting for them, calling to them, beckoning them into its ancient depths. With the Altera grounded, the crew cautiously moved toward the city, unsure of what they might find. They stepped through the massive stone archways, their footsteps echoing in the hollow, empty streets. It was clear that no one had lived here for centuries, but the city was remarkably well preserved. There were no signs of decay or ruin, no indication that time had ravaged it. The buildings, though worn by age, still stood tall, their surfaces smooth and untouched by the passage of eons. Tessa's crew moved through the city, their minds reeling from the implications of what they were seeing. They came across a series of chambers buried deep beneath the surface, their entrances hidden behind massive stone doors. Inside these chambers, they found artifacts, strange, glowing objects that hummed with an energy so powerful it sent a shiver down their spines. The technology was like nothing the galaxy had ever encountered. It was more than just advanced, it was beyond comprehension. Devices that could bend space itself, manipulate time, and even alter the very essence of life. There were symbols engraved into the walls similar to the ones they had seen earlier, but they were incomprehensible, as if they had been designed to keep any outsider from understanding their true purpose. As Tessa studied the artifacts, she began to piece together the history of this ancient human civilization. This city was not just a relic of the past, it was a testament to humanity's potential. A potential so great that it had terrified even the most powerful races in the galaxy. The records she had uncovered in the alien station, the whispers of a war with the Shroud, were no longer just distant stories. They were real. Humanity had not just fought against the Shroud, they had shattered them. The ancient humans who had built this city had created weapons so powerful, so destructive, that the very fabric of reality itself could be altered at their will. Time could be twisted, space could be bent, and entire civilizations could be wiped from existence with a single thought. Tessa realized that the true reason the galaxy had avoided human space was not just fear of war. No, it was far worse than that. The galaxy feared the potential humanity held powers so immense that no empire, no federation could stand against them. The Shroud had learned that lesson the hard way, and now it seemed that the rest of the galaxy was doing everything in its power to erase humanity from history. They weren't just trying to avoid a war, they were trying to bury the truth. The power of humanity, of what they had once been, was far too dangerous to be allowed to resurface. But now, standing in the heart of this ancient city, surrounded by artifacts that defied logic and reason, Tessa knew the truth couldn't be hidden any longer. The galaxy would have to face what humanity had been and what it could become again. The weight of this realization pressed heavily on Tessa's chest. She had uncovered the secrets of an ancient civilization, but those secrets were far more dangerous than anything she had anticipated. What was the cost of revealing this power to the galaxy? If the truth were known, there would be chaos, panic, and war. The entire universe might descend into bloodshed, desperate to control humanity's terrifying potential. But if the truth remained hidden, what would happen to the human race? Would they be forever isolated, trapped in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, their true power lost to time? As Tessa stood in the center of the city, gazing at the artifacts that surrounded her, she felt the weight of her decision bearing down on her. She knew that the path she chose would shape the future of the galaxy, perhaps the future of the universe itself. She could expose the truth, revealing humanity's power and risking a galactic war, or she could protect it, ensuring that the secret remained buried forever, keeping the galaxy safe from the horrors that humanity could unleash. Her mind raced with the possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. But one thing was certain, the reckoning that had begun with her discovery was far from over. The galaxy had underestimated humanity once before. Now, it was Tessa's turn to decide whether to let it rise again or to ensure that it stayed buried for good. Tessa stood alone in the center of the ancient city, the weight of her discovery pressing down on her like 1,000 suns. The decision before her was immense, one that could shape the future of the galaxy, or doom it forever. The secret of humanity's power, long hidden beneath layers of time and forgotten history, lay in her hands. It was a power capable of bending the very laws of reality, of rewriting the fabric of the universe itself. Yet with such power came consequences, risks far beyond anything she had ever imagined. Could the galaxy be trusted with this knowledge? Would they understand that humanity's power was not a weapon to be wielded recklessly, but a force to be respected, even feared? If she revealed the truth, she could change the course of history, but in doing so, she would be putting everything at risk. As Tessa stood at the edge of the towering city, her mind raced, torn between two choices: to keep the secret buried, protecting the galaxy from the devastating consequences of humanity's potential, or to expose it, to challenge the galaxy to come to terms with the true might of the human race. The burden was almost too much to bear. Her crew, still recovering from their near-death experience at the hands of the unseen forces, was waiting for her decision. They too were uncertain, caught between the knowledge that they had stumbled upon something beyond their understanding, and the reality that the rest of the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. But as Tessa considered her options, a new and far greater threat began to stir. The Shroud, the same race that had been obliterated by humanity's ancient might, was not gone. They had returned. Their fleet, vast and unstoppable, now descended upon the moon with the fury of a vengeful god. Tessa's pulse quickened as the realization hit her. The Shroud had been waiting. They had not forgotten. They had been biding their time, knowing that the galaxy would eventually uncover the truth about humanity, about what humanity had once been. They had returned not just to destroy what was left of humanity, but to eradicate the memory of their defeat and effort to wipe out every trace of a race that had humbled them, that had erased their existence from the galaxy's history. The Altera's systems flickered to life as the Shroud's fleet drew closer, massive ships warping space around them as they neared the moon. There was no time to hesitate. The moment had arrived, and Tessa knew that the choice she had been avoiding could no longer be postponed. She could bury humanity's power forever, but that would mean giving in to fear, letting the galaxy remain ignorant and complacent, allowing the Shroud to rewrite history as they saw fit. Or she could use the ancient technologies, unleashing the forgotten power of humanity, and show the galaxy what they had forgotten. The thought terrified her, but there was something deep inside her, a spark of defiance that pushed her forward. She could feel the weight of every human who had come before her, every soul who had fought to protect Earth and its people. Humanity had always been a force to be reckoned with. It was time the galaxy remembered that. Tessa rushed back to the ship, her crew following close behind. As they entered the Altera, she ordered the systems to access the hidden caches of human technology they had uncovered. The ship hummed with power as the forgotten artifacts came to life, their ancient energies flowing through the ship's core, activating long, dormant systems. The air around them crackled with energy as Tessa's hands flew over the controls, tapping into the depths of the forgotten human technology. She had no instruction manual, no guide, just the raw power of the artifacts and her own determination. The first energy wave surged through the ship, flooding the surrounding space with a dazzling light that twisted the fabric of reality itself. Time and space bent and warped around them, and the Shroud's fleet faltered, their ships destabilizing under the pressure. Tessa's eyes widened as the systems continued to power up. She could feel the immense power at her fingertips, a force unlike anything she had ever known. The human technology had awakened, and with it came a flood of memories, visions of the ancient civilization that had shaped humanity's destiny. It was overwhelming, yet it was beautiful. Humanity's true legacy, not just as survivors, but as architects of reality itself, was finally being revealed. With a deep breath, Tessa activated the communication systems, sending a message out across the stars. Her voice, calm yet resolute, echoed through the galaxy, cutting through the noise of space and time. To the Shroud and to all who would seek to challenge humanity, we are not to be trifled with. You have forgotten us. You have tried to erase us. But we are not gone. We will rise again, and this time, we will not be defeated. The message reverberated across the galaxy, a shockwave that rattled the minds of every species, every empire that had ever dared to look down upon humanity. The Shroud's fleet, now disoriented and destabilized by the force of the human power that had been unleashed, hesitated. The air was thick with tension, the silence between the fleets deafening. Then, as the human power surged once more, the Shroud's ships turned and retreated, fleeing from the ancient force they had once underestimated. They had come to erase humanity, but instead they were reminded of the terrible mistake they had made. They were not the only conquerors in the galaxy. As the Shroud retreated into the void, Tessa stood in the cockpit of the Altera, watching the stars once again return to their quiet, distant glow. The battle was over, but the galaxy would never be the same. The Shroud had learned a hard truth. Humanity was not a race to be ignored, to be erased. The galaxy had long believed that the edge of human space marked the limit of exploration, a point beyond which no one dared to venture. Now they understood why. Humanity was not just another species. They were a force, a power that transcended the boundaries of the known universe. The map had always stopped where it did because that was where humanity's influence began, not as a small, insignificant race, but as a legacy too powerful to be contained. Tessa took a deep breath and looked out at the stars. She had made her choice, and the galaxy would never forget what had just transpired. Humanity had awakened, and the echoes of their power would ripple through the stars for eons to come. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The galaxy would now remember the name of humanity, and they would no longer be ignored. The era of humanity's silence had ended. The era of their reckoning had begun.